I'm Andrea Isabel Lucas, founder of Bar and Soul and author of Own It All. The Own It All podcast is all about how to stop waiting for change and start creating it. I interview inspiring folks and leading thinkers who share tips on how to make a difference in your life and the world around us. Listen in each week to harness your power, maximize your time, manage boundaries, rock your career, health, relationships, and be an ally for causes that matter. We'll help accelerate all you're capable of doing with practical advice, stories, and strategies. Get ready to own it all because your life belongs to you. Hi, and welcome to the Own It All podcast. I'm so excited to share my guest with you today. Her name is Sara Minkara. Sara and I met at a WGBH local television event a few months ago, and I was so fascinated by her and all that she's accomplished. So Sara is the founder and CEO of Empowerment Through Integration, or ETI. It's a nonprofit committed to developing a more inclusive society by empowering youth with disabilities through direct service programming and by transforming social and cultural stigma against disabilities. Sara strives to elevate marginalized voices, diverse viewpoints, and respect for individual value. Inspired by her own journey as a Lebanese American Muslim woman who lost her sight at age 7, Sara has transformed her passion into empowering individuals to become catalysts for change in their own lives, communities, and beyond. With support from the Clinton Foundation, Sara founded ETI as a student at Wellesley College. She continued to grow its programs and expand its mission while earning her graduate degree in public policy at Harvard. Sara has been recognized as one of Forbes 30 Under 30, an Echoing Green Fellow, a Halcyon Incubator Fellow, the Zero Project Impact Transfer Program, and as an honor roll alum of Clinton Global Initiative University. Wow. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be with you today.
I'm so excited to get to chat with you. There's so many things I want to talk about. I guess the first thing I'd love to hear is a little bit about your story, how you got into doing the work that you do. And then I would just love to learn more about your programs, what they entail.
So my story, it started from age 7 years old. I woke up one day and I had lost most of my vision. So I had become blind. And I am the second person in my family. So my older sister also became blind at age 7 years old. And growing up, we kind of were exposed to two different worlds and two different realities. One world where we were empowered, supported. We went to the mainstream schooling in our town. We lived a very much full, complete life, and that was because our parents, my mother, and my teachers and my community really pushed us to tap into our full potential and our full value. But then we were also exposed to another world during our summer trips to Lebanon, where my parents are originally from, a world where our blindness, our disability was seen as something to be ashamed of, something to be hidden, pitied, and something to really seen as a burden on society. And I used to really hate that narrative, and I used to be ashamed of my blindness and my disability. And I used to think to myself, if I lived in that narrative my whole life, I wouldn't be where I am right now, and I would have accomplished what I've accomplished so far. But then I also realized that most kids with disabilities, whether in Lebanon or across the world, or even parts in the US, are living that reality and that narrative of charity. You are less than, you are not have the same value or potential as everyone else. And realizing that that's the common narrative, and realizing that I actually was privileged. I had an amazing support system, which is not a common thing. That's where I ended up founding ETI, Empowerment Through Integration. And our mission, our overarching mission, is let's disrupt the narrative surrounding disability. Let's move from a charity-based perspective to a value-based perspective. So not just human rights, where that's the common narrative right now. I guess we have to integrate, we have to educate, we have to include people with disabilities. We want to come to a point where we say we want to include people with disability is a value for all. So that's kind of our overarching mission. Let's move to a value-based narrative, not just for youth with disabilities, not just to the families, the community, but society at large. Everyone within society needs to be part of that narrative change. And we do that through a combination of direct service programs in countries like Lebanon, where we work directly with the youth, the families, and communities. We also work on a more sectoral level, the government, nonprofit, and academic, through our inclusion training workshops. And we also try to reach the public at large through our public engagement and advocacy programming.
Okay, wow. So you lost your vision at age 7, and so did your sister, actually. You were raised in a really empowering environment with not only your family, but it sounds like with your teachers at school. And then you had this other experience when you would travel over the summers where you were treated as though because you had a disability that you were actually a burden, like that you were being tolerated. And it sounds like one of the things that you realized out of that was, first of all, realizing, wow, I actually have been very privileged not to have dealt with this until now. And it created in you a commitment to have people with disabilities not just be tolerated, but be respected, wanted, and not just included because it's the, politically correct thing to do.
Exactly.
Wow. So there's three different prongs to your nonprofit, ETI. What does the direct service part of that entail?
Yeah, so we have direct service programs that we run in countries like Lebanon, where we work directly with the youth with disabilities, the families, and the communities. And we actually run 6 different programs. And we try to engage all stakeholders within a society that impact a youth with disabilities life, right? So first we have programs for the youth with disabilities where we train them on life skills, where we train them
Mm,
on the value of being included in society, then we train them on the value of actually giving back. So we have the life skill training program, we have Camp Rafiki, which is the inclusive summer camp, and then we have the social project program, which is then them doing community service projects, because we want them to first believe that they can be independent and they have the power to be independent. That's life skills. B, now that you have the confidence and the tools to be independent, now you should feel like you can belong. And that's the Camp Rafiki, the inclusive summer camp. You can
wow.
belong, there's value in belonging. And then C, let's take it a step further and say, not only do you belong, but you can contribute. And that's
Mm,
the social project program. So those
wow.
are the programs directly with the youth. Then we also realize that the youth shouldn't hold the burden of making that narrative change. Families are actually the first society that youth are exposed to. So that's why we've created family workshops, because we want to make sure families are on the same page and families are creating an empowering space at the homes. So
Mm,
that's why we have these family workshop programs. Because a lot of the families actually bring the mentality and the stigma to the home. So we want to make sure we don't just empower the youth and then the youth goes back to an disempowering family household. So that's why we have that programming. Then you want to say, well, we need to also include society at large, youth without disabilities, young professionals, community members. And that's why we actually have a volunteer training program, which is this past summer, we engaged 185 volunteers from across the country where we trained them on how to facilitate empowerment and inclusion. These volunteers are volunteers with and without disabilities, volunteers from diverse socioeconomic, racial, religious, and gender backgrounds. And these volunteers become ambassador of bringing the narrative change back to the communities. So we have a lot. So it's 6 programs in total,
wow.
and it's really engaging this narrative change on all different levels, but in a very deep way.
Mm. So one of my questions that I was going to ask you, and I think you started to answer that already, is like, what is it going to take to change that narrative socially where there is no more of this idea of like, oh, inclusion is something we have to do, but like inclusion is something that we want to do. There's huge
Mm-hmm.
value for all of us in this. It sounds like what you're saying are these having these ambassadors or allies
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
out there changing the narrative within their own communities and creating their own ripple effect within their networks of conversations and social networks.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to take everyone to be involved, every single person, because whether you're a teacher, whether you're an employer, whether you are a parent, whether you are a business owner, whether you are a policymaker, everyone needs to be coming at it from this value based narrative. And that's why we are trying to really create this narrative change on a very much grassroots level and impacting the youth, the young professionals that are the future of that country, right?
Mm.
And because if you think about it, in most countries, whether in the US or in Lebanon, there are policies for people with disabilities. There are policies that are supposed to be protecting the rights of people with disabilities. But who implements the policies? It's people. And if people do not believe in the value of these policies, they're never going to be implemented. Or if they are implemented, they're implemented in a way that it's almost like I have to instead of I want to. And this even happens in the US. There's so many entities and so many schools or so many spaces where they're doing it because they have to and they would rather than instead if they want to.
Mm.
So this is where our approach is let's really start from grassroots level, bottom up, and let's try to engage everyone.
That's amazing. It's just so resonating with me what you're saying, because I do think that there was a time, maybe not so recently, but when I was growing up and going to school, and even for a while, I was going to school for education. So I was learning a
Mm-hmm.
lot about we always called it tolerance, and I always thought that was the worst word, because tolerance isn't even scratching the surface of what it should be. Like, how about respect? How about value?
Exactly.
Not just tolerate. And it sounds like that's really the shift that you're creating with your organization.
Exactly. Exactly. It's respect, it's value, it's being seen and being heard and wanting to hear that voice and want that voice to be included. It's not tolerance. Tolerance is unfortunately actually can create a negative ripple effect
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. One thing that you said that really stuck out to me was that you had a realization of the privilege that you had enjoyed, I guess you could say, as a person with
Mm-hmm.
disabilities. I think that that is, I don't know how old you are when you had that realization, but that's really a very mature thing. And I feel like, privilege, that is really a perspective shift that it takes a long time to come to in your life, is just being willing. Like, most of us, so quick to point out our challenges, our struggles, the things that haven't gone the way that we wanted them to. We're quick to point out other people's privilege, maybe. And it takes something to acknowledge, I think, your own privilege and say, like, oh, wow, like, yeah, I've had my challenges, but I'm pretty lucky, and I want to pay this forward to others. Did that come naturally for you, or was that something that you were kind of taught? And um, how do you think others can kind of find that for themselves?
That's a really good question. So a few things. One is I think one factor is that growing up, my mother never allowed us to say the words, "Oh my God, my life is so hard,"
Hmm.
and "Life is so difficult because I'm blind." Or this is because I'm blind. I can't do this because I'm blind. So we never grew up in this narrative at home, like, oh my God, your life is so hard. And I think with that baseline of a narrative, I never really saw never pitied myself. I never felt bad for myself. And if something was difficult, she was like, you're going to find a way to figure this out. And I think that first gave me the internal strength, internal power, and internal um, understanding that um, my blindness was not negative and was actually could be turned into something positive and something powerful. The second thing is, I came across individuals and stories. I remember once this kid, his name is Omar, 12 years old at the time. This was back in Lebanon. Um, Still in diapers. His mom abandoned him when he was a kid. His dad is not around. He's being raised by his grandparents, never been to school, does not know how to talk because no one really communicates with him, sitting in the corner, literally waiting for life to end because of and it's all because he was born blind.
Wow.
And when I met him, I remember leaving being very sad and also realizing, man, I could have been that kid. Literally, just switch us around and I could have been that kid. But if I didn't have supportive family, if I didn't have supportive teachers, if I didn't have a supportive system,
Mm.
you never know what have I ended up with me. I didn't reach what I've reached so far because I'm smarter or have more skill set. No, every single person actually has something beautiful to contribute.
Mm.
Everyone has a power within them. You just need someone to help them recognize and see that power within. So I think those stories really opened up my eyes and really made me realize I'm so lucky that I had that empowering, supportive system. And lastly, I never thought actually in a million years I would start an NGO. My path was actually I studied math and economics in undergrad, and then I was going to do a PhD. But my undergrad thesis advisor told me, he's like, why are you applying to these PhD programs? Your eyes light up when you talk about the summer camp that you ran in Tripoli, Lebanon, the inclusive summer camp. Go pursue that.
Mm.
That's your passion. And I think having him help me realize that this was my passion helped me push me towards that direction of pursuing that mission of mine. So all of those different factors coming together made me move towards pursuing this mission, if that makes sense.
Wow. So you know that you're doing something that you're deeply passionate about, and it's more important than perhaps the credentials or the other things that you were initially interested in pursuing. You found a thing that made you come alive, and you chose to pursue that. I have to imagine still it can be really hard. I have to imagine there might be days where you want to feel a little sorry for yourself, or
Mm-hmm.
that you get down, or that things aren't happening as fast as you'd like or as well as you'd like. First of all, do you have days like that? And if so,
Oh yeah.
what do you do to get yourself back into a positive mindset when that happens?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I definitely have many of those days, especially when it comes to work, and there's always ups and downs with work and challenges. I think for me, what helps me is I love to dream, and I love to sometimes sit and listen to music and walk outside, or and that helps me kind of dream about what the future. I love to read books and listen to books, and that helps me kind of escape to a different world
Mm,
to kind of really get some inspiration from. I love to be out in nature and just connect with the world that way. Nature really helps me kind of take a step back and connecting with family and friends as well. I mean, so all of that in different ways help me kind of um, get out of the kind of the days that are very much struggles, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because that was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was your what self-care looks like for you. So it sounds like there's a lot of self-care in your life. There's spending time with people that you love. There's getting into nature. There's sometimes just escaping, reality for a little bit with a book or with music. And I'm really intrigued that dreaming is so important to you because I have to say that like if you've got a huge vision for the future, that could really help when things get hard because it's something, to look
Yes.
forward to.
Exactly, definitely. And on that point, actually, so self care, it is it's a constant struggle of mine to do self care. It is a thing that my family and friends try to push me all the time to really focus on, because you can really be very much so get sucked into the work to a level where you say, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. I need to push and push and push forward.
Yes.
But also one other thing for me is spirituality helps me kind of anchor myself and knowing that um, I do believe like tests in this world are actually a blessing in disguise, and trying to see kind of the meaning behind every single challenge that comes my way, and not see it as something as here to hurt me, but it's more here to for a blessing in some kind of way.
Mm. Wow. You keep on touching on the things that are on my list of questions to ask you. So this is so perfect. It's like we planned it. So that was going to be my next question is, do you consider yourself spiritual or religious? And what does that entail for you? Like, do you pray
Yeah.
daily? Like, do you meditate?
Yeah, yes, I do consider myself spiritual. I'm Muslim, and I do the things I do practice on a daily basis. I do my five prayers, daily prayers, and other stuff. And I think for me, the prayers, daily prayers, help me anchor my day, and it's meant for us to kind of take a step back 5 times a day and realize that there's more important things to this world than sometimes what we're focusing on. I think it gives us a better idea of the big picture, and also realizing that there's a bigger mission to this world of kindness and compassion and value and connection and authenticity. And I think so. Yeah, spirituality is a big part of my life, and it's one of my biggest anchors.
Yeah, sounds like one of the cornerstones of your self-care and how you continue to stay energized. Because, like you said, you could get really burnt out working around the clock for something that you have a mission that's so much greater than yourself. I'm sure there's always a feeling that you could be doing more, or that change isn't coming fast enough, or things like that. So I would think that it takes a lot to stay in a positive mind space and take such good care of yourself so that you can continue to contribute.
Yes, definitely.
It's interesting. This has come up a few times, and I was actually chatting with Kirtland for another episode of the podcast, which was the other speaker the night that Sarah, you and I met, and we were talking about just that, how like when you are working for something that's bigger than you and probably bigger than your lifetime, God, it's just so important to find a way to make it sustainable for you so that you really can give your greatest
Yeah.
contribution, and not being so perfectionistic about it that, it's all or nothing, because there's no way we could do everything that we envision, especially if you have a huge
It's so true. It's so true. And I think it's a combination of, to be honest, at times a reminder of humility, and it's like you're not the like it's not like I'm not the person that's going to solve this. ETI is not the organization that's going to solve this. We're part of it, and we're part of the hopefully the solution. But it's bigger than all of us, and I think remembering that helps us kind of not lose hope, but then also helps us move forward. But then also, on the other hand, really believing that we can contribute to this mission, and that we do need to push forward and push forward. Because if inclusion was easy, it would have been achieved by now. If empower, and I think I need to always remember that in my team, that if it's that easy, it's done. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. Anything that's worthwhile changing or really working on is hard.
Right. Otherwise, you'd be taking on another mission, a bigger one.
Exactly.
Hey, it's Andrea again. Can I help give you the courage to own your life? Want to redirect your time towards the goals and experiences that really matter? Get your copy of my book, Own It All, on Amazon. Part manifesto, workbook, and expert interview collection. Then, let's connect on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and continue the conversation. Find out more at AndreaIsabelLucas.com. So you seem like a very high achiever, if you don't mind me saying so. You went to Wellesley and Harvard, and you've created this amazing nonprofit. Were you always a high achiever? Is this something that was in you even when you were really small, like before you were 7? Is this something that you think your parents instilled in you? Have you just always felt like you have a lot to contribute and you feel a sense of like responsibility to do that? Like, I'd love to hear more about that.
I don't know if I've always had the feeling or the responsibility to contribute. I think that's over time. For me, that was over time believing that I can contribute. I think my parents did instill the sense of you can do what you want to do and go do it. And nothing should stop in your way, kind of, and they pushed us. I think I'm also very stubborn, and that helps. I was in school very much a high achiever, in the sense that I would always want to be, I took honor classes and wanted to do well in grades and that kind of stuff. But I wasn't that student that was thinking about starting a nonprofit from high school. I mean, I think Wellesley was the years where I found myself a bit more, and I found my passion and my voice in that sense, and I explored and and running that summer camp is where it was in Camp Rafiki, the inclusive summer camp in Tripoli, Lebanon, where we brought together blind and sighted kids, so kids with and without disability. That's where, after seeing the impact for the kids, the impact for the parents, and the impacts for the community, and the impact for myself,
Mm.
for the first time saying to Tripoli, Lebanon, where my parents are originally from, where my extended family lives, saying, I am proud to be blind. I'm out here. This is work I'm proud of. This is the impact I'm proud of. It was almost also, it was also a huge moment of, for myself to say, to really embrace my blindness, my disability identity in a full way, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Um, because for the longest time, that's where in Lebanon, like I was always, I was exposed to that narrative. So it's the first time I was like, I'm out loud, out there, and proud to be blind. So, and that's where I found my voice.
Yeah, I mean, that's really owning who you are and what you're here to do and what your life is about at this point and your mission.
Yes, exactly.
So, like in high school, before you went away to college, what did you think that you would do after that?
Hmm. I thought that I would. So my dad has a PhD in computer engineering. My sister was on a path of doing a PhD in chemistry. So I think one of my plans was to do a PhD
Yeah.
in economic development or math. So that was kind of my plan. I mean, my strength and my other passion as well is math, and I love math.
Hmm.
So my focus was kind of what would I, more kind of math oriented, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And very much academic oriented because of the family I was raised in. So yeah.
So you talked about dreaming, and I am fascinated by that because it sounds like for you, taking time to dream really energizes you and returns you to a really positive mindset. I'm just curious, like, what does dreaming look like for you? Do you do your best dreaming in a journal? Do you do it when you're out walking in nature? And then do you take those plans or those dreams and turn them into concrete plans? Do you like sit down and list out your goals after you're done dreaming? Like, how does that go for you?
Yeah, so I do my list dreaming usually. The best setting for me is if I'm in a car, I have the window down, the wind blowing in my face, and I'm listening to music or something in my ears. That's kind of the best moments when I'm able to dream. And usually, so it's usually the commute into work or back from work, and it helps me kind of go to a higher level thinking when it comes to my work. And that kind of then re-anchors me because sometimes you get so much focus on one specific challenge within the work or the day that you're in, but dreaming kind of takes me to higher levels. So then usually I drive my team crazy. So usually I get to the office or afterwards, let's say I'm going somewhere else, I will send some voice recordings to one of my colleagues and I'll be like, okay, so here's some of my thoughts. One, two, three, four, five. And so but I've had to also for me work on limiting some of translating that to my team because I also need the team to be like we need to as an organization we need to be
Right.
focused because some of my dreams might be going in so many different directions. So I've actually started making my own separate notes where some of those dreams can be achieved later on in life, or some of those dreams can be pursued on the side, or some so. Yeah, I think dreaming helps me move forward and also makes me realize that this world is not a linear world. My life is not linear. It can go in many different angles, dimensions, and and so that reminds me never to limit myself in terms of what I can do. Sarah cannot doesn't have to do things through ETI. She can do things through other avenues, or I can do things later on in life, or I can do things through other partnerships or other people. So yeah.
Yeah, that is huge. And it's so great because I know, like, when you have a team, you can get so much more done. But yes, it needs to be clear what everyone's working on and the direction are going. And when you have like an awesome new idea, sometimes it's hard because you want everyone to just follow along, like down all these different paths. And I mean,
Yeah.
there can be room for that still, where it's like, oh, I have this idea. I'm going to share it, but that doesn't mean we're going to do anything about it just yet. Maybe next quarter or even next year, that's something we'll work on. Like if it still feels exciting, 90 days from now or whatever. But you make such a good point that like, it's not linear. It's not like you're on this track. You have this one particular nonprofit. It has to operate one certain way. Like you can have different partnerships. You can have some things that happen later, some things that you do just in your personal life, and it's not part of that.
Yep.
So I love what you said about just being able to go in different directions and different dimensions of what's possible. I think that's so huge to getting out of being mired in like the day-to-day stressors, kind of the weeds of basically running an
Exactly.
organization. What would you say is your biggest challenge as a leader?
Oh, my biggest challenge as a leader, I think I have a hard time. I'm a very much an emotionally driven person. I mean, I think with my head, but like, my emotion or my EQ is very high, and that could be a strength in many ways, but also could be a
Mm-hmm.
weakness where I have hard times making tough decisions, even though I know what would be the right
Mm,
decision. Or I have a hard, or sometimes I embrace other people's emotions and what their
yeah.
struggles and take that in, or sometimes, so I think, I mean, to be honest, and most leaders do struggle with this. It's a true good leader needs to balance between holding people accountable, but also empowering them.
Mm,
It's a balance. It's not one or the other. I can lean more towards the empowering too much because it's also part of the ATI's mission. So I'm like, let me empower you. Let me give you another chance, another chance, another chance, another chance. But it's not always the right. You need to balance because you also need to make sure you need to also be thinking of the health of the organization. You can't just be thinking of the individual employees as individuals. You need to see them as individuals, but you also need to see the organization as a whole. And it's a hard balance to do that, if that makes sense.
absolutely. I can definitely relate to that. And you're absolutely right. Like, obviously, you are someone who has a really big heart and really care about people. And I would imagine that in a situation like that, where something's not working out with someone on your team, you guys are so invested in the people that you're helping and the work that you're doing. And when they have the passion for that, it must be hard to have to sometimes make tough decisions if they're not getting the
Yes.
job done.
Yes. Yes.
Have you ever created like any systems or like boundaries or checklists or just ways to help you with those difficult decisions? Or do you have other people that you have weigh in when you're in a situation like that?
Yeah, I usually attempt to try to engage and get a lot of people's perspective. And I tend to also try to make sure I'm looking at things from a very um, metric base in certain things, not just, it's not like this is my gut feeling or this is what I think, but like basing it off of data points. But I think feedback from others, I think, getting advice. I have a really great support system of advisors and a great, board members and great, colleagues. So a lot of times, like I'm able to go to different individuals for different things. So, but it's a constant struggle, and it's also a struggle not to take that emotions back home, or it's a struggle not to disconnect from my work when I'm back home and leave work at home, back at work. That's another really challenge of mine is I bring work wherever I am at. I'm always thinking about the challenges that we're facing at work.
Mhm.
So it's a combination of all of that really, yeah.
And do you have a set schedule of when you work? And do you have a certain time of day that you like actually really sign off? Or are you kind of like always fitting it into all the little nooks and crannies?
Oh, I'm always kind of online, if that makes sense, which is not good.
Right?
And I've been trying to set boundaries.
Yep.
Um, so it's a struggle. So I tried and I 50% succeeded in this during Ramadan. not to check emails or messages after 8 p.m. until the next early morning. So that was something that I tried to stick to. And then also when I'm vacation, I tried. It is a challenge. So yeah, I haven't yet achieved that.
The struggle is real.
Yes.
What is a goal or a dream right now that you're working on that you're so excited about?
I think, I mean, right now, I mean, within ETI, we're at this really amazing inflection point within the growth, and I'm so excited with what 2020 is gonna bring to our kind of to the table. We're building out this new inclusion training workshops, which we're hoping to be bringing it forward to different entities like the UN, World Bank, the Prime Minister's office in Lebanon. So a lot of hopefully big opportunities coming our way, and our team is growing, and it's yeah. So a lot of great things.
Awesome. And what's your idea of like a really fun Saturday or like Friday night or something? Like, what do you do for fun?
I think it would be a combination of spending time with like family. Like let's say we had a family breakfast with the entire family,
Mm.
and then spending the afternoon out with friends. Or I love eating at different places. So I love checking out new restaurants or new places to eat. Or for instance, last weekend I did jet skiing for the first time.
Wow.
So I love doing that kind of stuff. This past summer, I actually did paragliding in Lebanon,
Whoa.
which was just crazy fun. But like so things that are push my boundaries, I love doing that. So it would be a combination of nature, activities, eating, family, and friends.
That does
That
sound
would be a perfect
perfect.
day. And ending the day with listening to a book.
So, for the people listening, I know a lot of us might have people in our lives that we care about who have disabilities, or we might have people that we work with, or we might not be sure. Maybe we don't know. Um, those of us that want to make a difference and that really want to be allies to help create a more inclusive world for people with disabilities, what are some of the things that we can do?
That's a really good question. So, first, there are 1 billion individuals in this world with a disability. That's 1/7 of our population, which means we're everywhere.
Mm.
And every single person in this world are in position of influence. Whether you are a teacher, whether you are a parent, whether you are an employer or a policymaker. If you want to be an ally to a person with disability, first, do not pity them, do not feel
Mm.
bad for them. See them as human individuals with value and potential. And if you approach a person with disability from, first of all, from that lens, you are from the get go creating an empowering space. So that's number one. Number two is make sure that you're creating a space that people with disabilities' voices are heard, they're seen, they're recognized, and they're valued. So you want to hear their voices, you want to hear the perspective, you want to hear what they have to contribute. And then finally, is that there isn't a one way of a successful life or one way of doing something successfully. Unfortunately, society has raised us in a way to think in a conventional sense. There's only one way to be, there's only one way to succeed in life. And I think that's wrong. And I think we need to be able to make sure that every single person, including a person with disability, chooses their own path and their own path of success and their own path of value. So do not tell them what they should be doing. Do not enforce on them what you think that they should be doing, but instead create a space where they're able to explore their own path and their own future. Um,
Mm.
so those are my three things.
That's huge because it's so easy for us to assume the correct path or that we
Yes.
all agree with that path should be. And it's probably hard to notice sometimes when you're making an assumption, as opposed to being open and non-judgmental and supportive of what might look like a different path. And it might be something that doesn't
Exactly.
match up with what we think it should be.
Exactly. And like and to wrap all of that up is that if every single person approaches the other person with this mindset that this person has something beautiful to contribute, you don't know what it is, but you know that they have something beautiful to contribute, and you want to learn and be compassionate and curious. That's going to lead to that path of them exploring and being empowered and being able to, just pursue their own path. Yeah.
Mm. How can people continue to keep in touch with you, support the work that you're doing, and follow along with your story?
So first, definitely, people can check out our website. It's etivision.org. So vision, VISSION. So etivision.org. That's our website. And then if anyone who wants to get in touch with me, it's Minkara at ativision.org. People can feel free to email me. You guys can follow us on the website, on our social media accounts. And any way that they want to be able to support, please definitely get in touch with us. We're always looking for allies in this mission of inclusion.
Thank you so, so much. It's been such an honor to have you on, and everything you're doing is so impressive, and I can't wait to see where it goes to next. And I just look forward to continuing to keep in touch and follow along with this journey that you're on.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks so much for having me. I'm truly honored and I'm humbled to have been able to talk to you. And yeah, I'm excited to keep this conversation going.
Thank you. I'm Andrea Isabel Lucas. Thanks for listening to the Own It All podcast, made with love and gratitude from Boston. If you liked what you heard, subscribe, rate, and review on your app. Then, connect with me on social media for more helpful tips and techniques. I'd love to talk with you there. Or maybe I can motivate your team at a conference, retreat, or special event. I'll be back next Wednesday with a new episode. See you then.